Check, 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 check. You should have it now, everyone. Check, 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 check.
Do you need anything to drink?
I'm good for now.
Okay. So I was like, I need to get some water.
Check, 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 check. Got it? All right, good evening, everybody. Today is Thursday, March 20th, 1 o'clock. I call this meeting to order. I'm here, Councilmember Morel is here, Councilmember Thomas is here, Councilmember Harris as a non-committee member is here as well. With that, I will move to approve the Budget Committee meeting minutes of February 20, 2025. Seconded by Councilman Morel. All in favor? Aye. 3 yeas, no nays. I'll also move to go into executive session on Wisner. Seconded by Councilmember Morel. All in favor? Aye. All right, we're headed to executive session, then we'll come back to deal with the agenda. All right, with this, I will move to come out of executive session, seconded by Councilmember Morel. All in favor? Aye. Members, I understand Council Members King and Green will be here shortly, but with that, we do have two important updates that we want to get on. First, the update on joint infrastructure, and then relatedly, a potential upcoming bond issuance. So I would invite anybody from the administration who wants to come present on joint infrastructure to come on down.
So this is when we have the most public one.
Do you have the presentation?
We do have the presentation. Can somebody just put it on? Oh, you got it. You're ready to roll with the presentation? We have it, though. Thank you.
There's a... I think we're just waiting for Rick to come back. But when he comes, he can join. We can get started.
Come on, check it and see if it moves it forward.
I'm sorry. If you're ready, get started.
All right, good afternoon.
I thought, are we getting started or wait for Rick?
I think we can get started.
Okay, great.
I text him and he can join.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
All right.
Good morning. Well, everybody, I've met some of you, but for the committee and as Council Member Green would say, the millions of people watching at home, will everybody at the table please introduce themselves?
I can start off. Hi, I'm Lenitra Hassan, Chief of Staff for Infrastructure. Questions for Joe Thread, who was on a well-deserved and well-needed time off. So,
My name is Amanda Gaze. I'm with CDM Smith. I'm the program principal.
My name is Ryan Donegan. I'm the DPW JIR Program Director.
I'm Jonathan Perrett, Senior Deputy Program Manager with CDM Smith.
Great. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. All right, we prepared a briefing for you for some of the questions that you had. You'll see.
Great. Can you pull the microphone a little bit closer?
Yeah, my volume
Thank you.
button's pretty low. Thank you. So we prepared a briefing for you for the questions that you had. We also wanted to provide...
Can we get the volume up in the back? Because I'm just saying I can hear. Well, let's see.
I think that the challenge is for everybody presenting, you're pretty much going to have to be on top of the mic. These mics are very low quality. Bend it closer to your mouth, whatever you have to do. But
The rock concert. Okay.
yeah, like you have to, just because she's trying to speak, but these mics are not the greatest quality. We really can't increase, as frequent flyers know, this is a constant problem. You have to like be on top of the mic pretty much.
All right, thank you. All right, we have a briefing prepared for you based upon the questions that you put forward. We also wanted to start with some context to the leadership change at the JIRR, which is our following slide, if you don't mind, Lisa. All right, so in December of 2024, the city elected to move to a different program delivery model, and that has since taken effect. We have a new program director, Ryan Donegan. Ryan brings a tremendous amount of experience from the private side as well as experience on the program over the last several years, but is very familiar with infrastructure, leadership, and management. We're very fortunate to have him. Within the program as well, we have the CDM Smith team has taken on a more active role in the program management. We have CDM Smith program managers and deputy program managers overseeing this work, which is executed by a combination of DPW staff, civic staff, and CDM Smith staff. We've also put in place a governance board formed of Lenitra Hassan, Joe Thread, and Rick Hathaway to make strategic decisions above the day-to-day level to set direction for the program. And then I also did want to highlight that there is still procurement ongoing to select consultants and contractors, and that does not involve consultants. So that selection committee was solely formed up of city and sewage and water board staff. So you had a question around the methodology for selecting the remaining JIRR projects. And all of the JIRR projects have now been grouped into 3 categories. Projects that were previously committed to or under construction, so proceeding as scoped. Projects that have been identified to proceed in an optimized fashion, and then projects that have been paused pending necessary funding. So regarding how those projects were selected, projects were identified that had either a completed design or a nearly completed design and were a critical project, so they were the closest to being ready to going out next for procurement. Projects rose up higher in the list if they had ancillary funding sources like HMGP and DR, Syria funding, so other sources of funding that didn't want to be lost by delaying those projects. As well, projects with the lowest quality streets moved those projects up higher in the list to be advanced with funding. And then as well, a very intentional exercise occurred to balance the projects across the council districts to reach the equitable approach that was originally envisioned by the settlement, so that we'd hit the balance that was always intended with how the settlement was completed.
All right, can you stop for a second? Councilmember Harris has some questions, as do I, so let Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, I think my first question is, did you elicit, and I know the answer to this, any council input of what projects would be optimized? I can tell you that we are boots on the ground. We know these projects in and out. We get the complaints every single day that we pass along to DPW and roadwork. But I don't recall anybody ever sitting down with Matthew and myself and saying what projects should be focused on in your particular district.
Do you want to?
So no, we didn't do that. However, we did take some of the feedback in terms of emails and constituent complaints and provided that information to City of Smith to inform which projects could be included with the remaining funding.
So, right, so you took feedback from emails, but you didn't actually sit and meet with us. I mean, this is the first time I'm seeing you. And I think that's problematic because, again, we know the problematic projects within our particular districts, and we can tell you what should be focused on, or at least take our input on what should be focused on.
Understood.
I would just say y'all might want to do better than understood at some point, because you have at least 2, potentially 3 frustrated district council members, and I would think about maybe some answers about why that wasn't done. I'll go to Councilmember Thomas before I come, because I've got significant questions about this too.
No, I mean, just to follow up to Councilmember Harris's question, I can give you a couple of examples of businesses that were impacted negatively by streets projects or infrastructure projects. One for 15 months probably lost $7,000 a day. Another corridor that was actually on the come up around Bundy and Lake Forest, where that whole area is filled with businesses. And because a project was selected while new businesses were moving in, it actually affected their bottom line. Now they're surviving, but there used to be a system or a method. Councilmember Jerusalem actually, I hate to keep reminding people of the past because some people try to hold it against me, but if you don't know where you came from, it's kind of hard to know where you're going. There used to be a pool, Councilmember Harris, of funds that council people were involved in. At one point, I think it was maybe $7 million per district, where if there were emergency projects or important projects that could impact certain areas, council people had input. I think that went away during the Landrieu administration. But I think what Councilman Harris is talking about is just communication. If we can help you, tell you maybe a project that can be delayed, maybe a project that need more attention so it can be done quicker, because it affects the tax revenue they collect to give to us. So hopefully at some point moving forward, there'll be a system of, if not to allocate a certain amount of money per district like used to happen, that there's at least a conversation about a priority list in district A, B, C, D, and E, so we can kind of show you what and how and who's affected. So if we could get a commitment to that moving forward, period, really. I don't know why things always change from one administration to the next, especially stuff that works, but there are a few projects we could have given you guys in the districts where the infrastructure work actually affects it. And I've had this conversation with Joe Threat, Mr. Montano before. People don't mind an inconvenience, but when what we're doing to try to help them turns into a hardship. A hardship is different from an inconvenience. It could be economical, it could be social, it could be emotional. So I think we can help with that if you talk to us and ask us. Thank you.
Councilmember Thomas, to your point, I see a Gertown project on the list. I don't know exactly where the Gertown project is located. So the 2nd District Police Station is located in Gertown, and safety is impacted because those roads are so torn up around the police station that it's very difficult for them to get their cars out without beating up their cars, breaking tires, axles, etc. So it's both an economic issue, but it's also a public safety issue when you don't consult us about where in a neighborhood roadwork should be completed. So can you describe exactly where in Gertown you are planning to start a JIRR project? And to input and feedback, have you talked to the commander of the 2nd District to see how that work might impact public safety issues, or have you even thought about that?
And just to clarify, is that RR 213 that you're referring to?
Y'all should know what it is. It's Gertown.
There's several in Gertown.
There's one. So you let me know where it is. That's my question to you. Where in Gertown are these projects? It's a problem that you can't tell us.
Yeah. We can advance a couple of slides if you'd like to see on the slide.
And we can tell you which segments. Obviously, we can't tell you which segments right now, but we can provide you with the segments that are included in 213.
Already included, plan to be included? Can we take those segments out? That's my question, is that without feedback from not only myself and Matthew, who knows these roads in and out, but also the commander of the 2nd District of what should and should not be fixed, and neighbors, how are you automatically including these segments that you can't tell me what segments
are? So it was included because it was FEMA scope, right? So when you have a disaster, FEMA does identify certain segments that have to be remediated because of damages due to Hurricane Katrina. So some of it is we cannot remove some things out of the scope because it is mandated in our PW for how we have to do certain things. But we may be able to upscope, or if it wasn't mandatory, we can take things out, but some segments are mandatory. So we would have to look at all the segments within that project to identify what was mandatory versus what was elected.
And that's my question is, can you sit with us, sit with the commander, and say, okay, this is what the scope is. Should we add additional areas around Gertown, around the police station, in the neighborhood where the streets have been for years torn up?
The issue with adding segments is that we're at a juncture now where our funding is finite, right? We have finite amount of money. And any additional scope that we add, it limits our ability to do the rest of the projects that we have identified here that we can fund. So we have to be careful because there's a finite amount of money that's remaining.
So talking about, and just moving on, and I'm sorry to take up some time, but I have to leave for another engagement in a minute. The Saratoga Burn Lot, which is part of a watershed project, that's been in the queue forever. I think that is a FEMA scoped project, but I don't see that on the list.
H&GP FEMA, so it's a different bucket.
So is that going forward? Do you know?
As far as I know, yes, but I'm not the project manager. This group isn't the project team for that particular scope, so I would have to go back to the SGI team to ask them that specific question.
For these JIRR projects, are you using the task order method, or are we doing the tear up the streets, leave it, and then go back?
Task order only.
Okay, so can you explain what that is?
You want to take the task order?
So for each one of these groups, you have projects within the group, and each project will act as an individual project, and there will be sub-task orders within those projects. So basically, they have to finish or get to 90% complete in each task order before they move to the next task order, and that prevents what happened before where streets were opened up for months and months at a time without them being finished.
And what is the coordination with Sewer and Water Board? I see Steve Nelson back there. We see so many times where JIRR work is finished and then something happens where Sewer and Water Board has to go back and tear up some areas again. Are you making sure that you're coordinating on the front end to complete these projects? Are we going to see it where we have these beautiful streets and all of a sudden there's a service cut or some other issue that has to be made?
So there has been a lot of coordination on the front end for these projects. They're all full reconstruction, which means it includes their utilities. We will be replacing all the utilities, water line, sewer. There should not be any street cuts that are needed after the projects are completed.
So including utilities like AT&T and
Correct.
the others. Okay, thank you.
I'm going to go back because I have heard about this equity lens. Let's just be also clear. There's an $800 million shortfall, right? I mean, I think we need to say that out loud so the public knows that there's $800 million for work not to be done. I still don't understand what the equity is here, because if you look by district, the projects in District A and D have the least amount of work being done, both monetarily and by sheer volume. So I don't understand how that can possibly be equitable given where we are. There's 30 projects on your slide in District D that are awaiting additional funding. There's 28 in A, and that's either full or partial. There looks like there's 6 in District B, only 3 in District C, which is obviously the smallest part of this group, and 5 or 6 in District E. So I'm struggling to understand the equity lens that has been purported to be the decision, but I'm not seeing it based on the numbers.
So there was an original distribution of work from the settlement, and the work that was done to facilitate this process was to land the projected final completion of all this work across the districts relatively close to what the original settlement value was. And I'd say it's not 100%, but it's within percentages, very close.
But based on our math, the total cost of active and completed construction in District A is a little over $300 million. The paused projects are $330 million. So even if you say we're doing halvesies, we're on the losing end of that. And District D is a significant loser based on the math that I'm seeing here too. Councilmember Green isn't here, but he has 435 in active costs and then 304. I mean, again, going back to the total active and completed construction, District A has $303 million. B has 100, almost 86 million. District C, 41 million. District D, 435 million. And District E, 216. So I'm not even close to being number one on the project. I mean, 435 million is a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And I'm not seeing supplementation other places. So what am I missing?
So one of the other things that Amanda mentioned was that they prioritized some of the projects that had supplemental funds from other grant sources, where we would sacrifice or lose other grant funds because it was adjacent, and the JIRR was used to supplement those other grant sources, right? So those were HMGP projects and NDR projects, and those projects were heavily distributed in District D.
Okay, but then you have A as a little bit of an outlier at 303, and then B and E kind of close at 216 and 186, so 30 million difference there. I mean, like, how are we going to make all this up? I mean, this is, let me just put, I'm not trying to beat around the bush. Here's the ultimate question. The city of New Orleans has made a commitment to its people that they are going to fix these streets. Now that's not going to happen. How do we tell people you're a winner and you're a loser?
Well, the intention of the administration and all of us here is to complete the program, and we've communicated that to FEMA as well. So we need additional funding sources in order to make sure that we're able to complete the work as was originally planned.
I understand we're $800 million short. Got it. My question is, how do you tell people you're a winner and people you're a loser? That's what I'm asking.
I don't have the answer to that question.
And which formula you use to determine that?
Yeah. I mean, and look, and candidly, I've asked this question behind closed doors. The comments, Member Thomas's point is it the poorest communities? Is it the communities that had the largest amount of hurricane water that came in from Katrina? Is it the streets that are failure, and then the streets that are poor, all the way down to Patch Mill Overlay? I mean, I can't go to my neighborhood groups and be like, sorry, I don't have an explanation. And neither can you. I mean, you all, I'm doing this critically today because I know what the future is going to hold, which is upset neighbors demanding to have answers, and are trying to spare you, 73 different neighborhood groups where this question has to be answered. And I mean, candidly, I've been asking this question for I think about a year now. I have meetings, I have emails, and I just don't understand how we cannot articulate to the public, no matter where you live, how this happened. Councilmember Morel?
Thanks. We knew, I want to say starting earlier last year, that this JRR was going to be short. What is beyond frustrating is the efforts of this administration to not allow the council members to be participants in decision-making that's going to affect constituents who are going to turn around and call the council members. It's jarring. I wouldn't say it was unexpected, but it's jarring. And more importantly, as our district council members have said, if there's going to be triage, why wouldn't you actually interface with the council members in the districts who know where the pressure points are? These decisions were made in a warehouse. And what is beyond frustrating is that we all know when all this work is done or not done, there's going to be an effort to quantify where money was spent and where money was not spent. And whereas the original JRR plans had some equity geographically in where money was spent, when you look at that list and you look at where money was spent from the beginning of this program, it is going to tell the tape that even though equity might have been the intent, equity will not be what has happened. And rather than all of us collectively be able to say we all sat in a room and decided how best to spend this money with the little dwindling amount we had left, you basically just kind of told the council a pound sand. And I appreciate your presentation, but when you've already made let's be clear to the public, this is a presentation, not an effort to engage us as to what we think. You've already made your decisions. You put the council in a position where our only option is to fight with you over it. And the public is tired of us fighting. But when you look at behavior like this, what is our other alternative other than to fight you? If you're not going to ask us for permission, but you're going to ask us for forgiveness, I don't know why anyone is surprised the council is always in a combative posture. This could have been easily avoided. We knew last year it was going to come up short. You had a year to engage with district council members to figure out how can we spend this leftover money, and you chose not to. And I appreciate you believe that's your prerogative, but you should not be surprised when the council feels like we're at a point where we are not viewed as partners, but as obstacles. And I can tell you, both on the local, state, and national level, the public isn't hearing that anymore. The days of executives running over everyone to do what they want, that's over. And I think the public has spoken on more than one occasion that that's not what they want in the city of New Orleans. So I expect this won't be the last we hear of this, Mr. Chairman, but the next steps, whatever they may be, you caused this.
I mean, this is...
Can I offer just...
Yeah, go ahead, please.
And apologize. I'm here on behalf of Joe Threat, who's on a much-needed vacation. So my perspective and overview is clearly not going to be as granular as the team or Joe's. But during the presentation, when it was provided to me, some of these same questions came up. And I stepped out to talk to Rick a little bit more for clarity reasons. And perhaps he can come and elaborate. I understood the JIR program and the list that was compiled as a result of decisions made back in 2016 and mandates from the federal government on where and how we can spend money. To your points on the more engagement roads for the neighborhoods, the pot of money Councilmember Thomas was just talking about was part of the bond package, which is very nascent and part of the next presentation. So unless I'm getting that mixed up, Rick, I would love if you could come and elaborate our previous conversation. I feel very confident that the bond funding malleability that we hope to come forward at the next round in the next presentation will address some of those specific concerns and issues and allow for the council input to be established, because that is not a baked list. I understood that there to be some prescriptive issues related to the JIR. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. Like I said, I'm here for Joe. If Rick can elaborate, but I just don't want the perception to be that we're not going to work with the council. I understood this pot to be very different than, say, the GO bond that is in the future.
Yeah, but Gilbert, I guess just pushing back, like the bond issuance, I think all in is $600 million. The total cost of pause projects in districts D and A is $600 million. You can't do anything else in the city with these two projects. So I understand what you're saying, which is this is the mitigation that you're trying to do, and I appreciate that. But I think what I'm saying is, number one, there needed to be communication about what happened so we could all hold hands together. And look, I've gone to neighborhood meetings many times and had residents who are mad and said, I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with the administration on this issue, whatever the thing may be, and we're all holding hands together. That hasn't happened. Number two, I can't even get a rationale about how we got to this point. That's a problem. And then number three, I mean, I assume that of the bond issuance, you're trying to do that equitably, which then places certain districts behind other ones. So that's a problem. And again, these aren't problems necessarily you created, but they're the issues. And so I think what we ought to do after Rick speaks, and I know Councilmember Morel has a comment, is put a pin in the rest of this presentation for today so we get the answers, because I don't, as Councilmember Morel and Thomas said, us grousing at each other is not going to be helpful for anybody. I think the better thing to do is to come back either at a Public Works meeting or a Budget Committee meeting and make sure that we have more robust communication and answers to these questions. Rick, you want to go to Councilman Morel? Go ahead, Rick.
I would just add that all of the blocks that are included in these projects are worthy of reconstruction. We chose that because they were designed to be reconstructed. All utilities are being replaced. This work is required and needed. And of course the packages were further along. They were able to keep the program going. That's why we set these no-fault projects up, so that we could optimize the use of the final amount of money that was available. It was taken very seriously, and all of these blocks were always a part of the program, so it's no changes to the segments that are being reconstructed. They were always in there.
But Rick, I mean, in fairness, like, if you've been waiting for your street to be reconstructed to 2016 and you're not in the queue at the right time, then your street isn't being, I mean, you've been bumped back 4 times already. And you now, if you're on the pause project list, maybe that's 2027 or 2028, but maybe it's not.
Well, you'll see in the bond presentation that what we did was divide the money partially into major streets and the remaining into minor streets.
and separated that by $25 million per each district. Yes, $25 million is a small amount of money, just as you say. It's going to take hundreds of millions of dollars to repair the streets of New Orleans. It's a start, but that $25 million, we plan to work with every council person, just as Councilman Thomas had said in the past. It's the same process, getting with each district councilman, addressing the complaints that you guys have received, and working out the engineering details.
Well then, Rick, let me ask this question. Is it fair to say, rather than having a true methodology that went through a matrix, what really happened was the projects that were under design because we need to get them ready were the ones that were first, the ones that were very close to design are in the second queue, and the ones that aren't being done is because the city wasn't ready to move on them yet?
I'll say this, that the designs were further along because they were more of the priority projects that had already been established. So the earlier jobs that were in design were the priorities, the original priorities, and then as the program expanded, those projects were established and then designs began. The remaining jobs were the lower priorities.
But in other words, if your project was further along and the work could proceed, then that's what went to the top of the list. And the things that were not ready to proceed were considered lower priority and are not proceeding under the joint infrastructure plan.
They're not proceeding because there's not enough money to construct them.
Right, so that's the methodology. Okay, Councilmember Morel? You done? Yeah. Sorry, yes I am.
Twofold. One, I appreciate your offer to work with the council members with the bond money, but I will say, candidly, you didn't work with us on this. So I appreciate it. I promise we're going to work with you in the future, but the past behavior dictates future outcomes. And if what is really upsetting to me is that no one here is acknowledging the tremendous mismanagement of road work in the city of New Orleans. The amount of roads that were left opened until Mr. Threat came in charge of that department is how all those projects ran over and how the money dried up. Is anyone here going to dispute that? You won't hear that. So many projects were mismanaged and became more expensive that we had to do less roads. So we're managing what we have left, but we're managing what we have left because there are other streets that should have been done quicker, more expeditiously, and cheaper that ate up the money. And I want to be very candid when we get, I'm going to save a lot of my comments for the next item on the agenda, but there's a lot of promises being stuck in this bond issuance beyond streets. And that bond issuance cannot be the panacea to all of our infrastructure problems because it's not enough money. And I appreciate $25 million per district sounds like a lot. It really isn't with road work. It's just not. So to the public, what you see up there, that's what you got. You may or may not have a couple of side streets done. We're going to finish some bigger streets, but that is the end of the road work. And I don't want to mislead anyone that if a bond issuance happens, that it's going to solve any of these shortfalls. It's not. And it is really a fundamental failure of government that we don't have more streets done. And we're dealing with the fallout of that, but I don't want to underscore that mismanaged road construction and overages led us to where we are now. And just before you reply, because I know it's going to come there, we probably never had enough money for all the roads, to be candid. But we certainly had enough money for way more roads than we did.
Councilmember Thomas?
Just a recommendation for help, and I think what you're hearing here is that kind of working together works. Maybe that ought to be the theme moving forward. I know I appreciate the efforts of everyone here. We've gotten a lot of good marks with Joe and his team in terms of projects turnaround, getting things done better. But Rick, you relate Frank Stewart, the engineer, and you remember Jim and the worst to first projects, how they used to analyze them either in that district or a consultant would get together with the city and to see what did you need to do curb and gutter, what did you need in terms of asphalt overlay, which streets did you have with maybe some pothole issues, and not to say that certain streets wouldn't be done, but there was a rating system that was used that made it a lot easier to determine which capital projects you would get to first. Rick, I think I know you're familiar with that.
Yes.
And so I think maybe at some point there needs to be that kind of detail again. That thing that would help you guys, because if I think Councilmember Morel said that if you know you're running out of money, the ability to leverage and do more with the less is going to be extremely important now. So any help you guys want to have with that. Frank isn't alive anymore, but Jim or others and maybe some folk around like me, maybe we could revisit that to at least have a system of how we do more with less and how we kind of analyze worst to first, or what needs to be done and how much needs to be done. All right?
And Rick, I guess a couple of things before you go. One is, I want to say out loud, I don't blame you or the current state of DPW for the fact this is where we are, in the sense that the whole program did not have a project management group. They did not have enough people. They had too many contracts on the street at the same time. The contracts had too much time in them. There wasn't enough coordination with Sewage and Water Board. So we understand that you're inheriting a series of problems. With that being said, now we're trying to figure out, as Mrs. Sant said, how we're trying to solve that. For the projects that are optimized, are those ready to proceed or under contract right now?
There's been one project has bid a couple of weeks ago. We're in the bid recommendation phase right now. Another of the groups, there are 7 groups total. The second group is in purchasing, waiting for advertisement. The third group, all the title sheets and documents have been prepared. It's moving through the approval system right now. That'll be the first 3. The fourth project, the final plans are in my office with the exception of one of the sections of that project. As soon as that arrives, that group will be packaged and forwarded to purchasing as well. The other 3 are shortly behind those, and we expect all to be on the market before summer.
Okay, so I guess that just goes to the point of we want to make sure the work is going out, it's all contracted, and we're not in any danger.
Yes.
So, good. Then I got to ask, are we in any danger with the federal government of any money being clawed back or extension issues or timeliness or otherwise? Maybe that's the best question for you.
So last summer, the city did apply for a time extension request, and we asked for more money. It's a settlement, so they were probably never going to, give us more money. But we did ask for the time extension. And so I think with the recent group project that has come out, once we have a notice to proceed and a new schedule for that project, we can present that to FEMA to push the project along in terms of a time extension. Right now, our time extension expired on the 4th of March. So we are in need of a time extension, but I have no indication that we're in jeopardy of not receiving that once we have a notice to proceed with the new project.
Okay, that's a really important detail, just to make sure that we get everything done. There's no reason to believe, because what we don't want to do is the optimization projects are at risk, and we're double gulping as opposed to the big one we got to take right now.
I agree.
Yes. All right, well, I appreciate it. I mean, subject to anybody else, I think what we ought to do is put a pin in JR discussion, reconvene, and then I think also the bond discussion that's coming up next, to Mr. Montano's point, will help dictate maybe how we have some contours within JR too. So I appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, we'll get to the next one, which is upcoming, I would say, proposed bond proposition for potential October, November ballot.
Rick brought this. This is just in addition to the project here.
Mr. Chair, Mr. President, Councilmember Thomas, would you like us to begin?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Everybody at the table, Kyle Holman, Rick, and of course myself. Wanted to start the presentation out as I just described as very nascent in nature, meaning that nothing is baked into this. This is still being discussed and will be continuing to be discussed. This will eventually go before the voters. It must have community input, council input, but we wanted to at least start a framework and explain the necessity of it and really what some of our thoughts are moving forward. One of the most important aspects that I saw and learned coming into New Orleans city government was that there was not a sequential capital program that existed. It was very hodgepodge. A capital program across the country should almost be biannual. You should almost have a capital program every 2 years. You sell bonds, you have a predictability, you have a 10-year master plan. That was not in existence to my historical understanding in a continual basis. So what we are hoping to provide the next administration and what was provided to this administration is a planned capital program that should yield at least 2 to 3 year bond cycle where the voters have predictability and that you can develop master plans as it related to that. So what this is, originally we went to the voters in 2019, and I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Try to stay with me. We went to the voters in 2019. They voted to approve $500 million in bonds. We issued two different series in 2021 and 2024 that netted us somewhere in the realm of $570 million. That was executed throughout on various projects and programs and hopefully fulfilling significant amounts of needs. What we submitted to the council, I believe back in December, was a bond question in the package in consultation with bond counsel and some timelines that I'll go over briefly. I'm giving a quick overview and then I'll get into the specifics, and feel free to stop with any questions should you have them. Was a strategic plan that would allow us to issue debt in the coming year, sell the bonds, and then the money should be available probably in 2026. One of the things we heard very clearly from the public, the council, the administration is we want to know what we're voting on. We'd like some specificity. What I recommended to the team putting this together, historically there had been one large question. Will you support, I'm being general here, will you support a large $500 million bond package? The voters passed it. However, what is typically done throughout the country is you have a little bit more categorical information. So what we've recommended, and we'll get into in the presentation, is 5 categories where the voters will have specific information and decide to vote for each one of those categories relative to their support or lack of support. So that gives a little bit of the background. We can go to the next slide. This kind of readdresses some of the things I've already said about the importance of a capital program. I think it's, vitally important to your overall budget as your general fund. So much reliance over the course of the last decade here has been on general fund, and I don't feel like there's been a significant investment, in my opinion, or capitalization of our capital programs to the extent possible. Sometimes it's just part of the package, but not actually part of the solution. So if we can continue to move, next slide. So, as I mentioned, we started these conversations and we provided draft resolutions. December was a challenging time to really get all the information to the public, so I think that the council administration decided to wait to a later election so that we could have more information to the community, the residents, and to the stakeholders involved. And that is what we're beginning that conversation and presentation here at committee with. This is the bond proposal timeline. It gives you some specificity of when action has to occur. We are not precluded from getting on the October ballot, but I would recommend we don't speed that fast if we really want to be thoughtful and focus on a later adoption, which is the November 15th ballot. That'll give us a little bit more runway to have these conversations and deliberations on what should be inclusive in the bonds. So that's the timeline that we are working toward, of course, in conjunction with State Bond Commission as well as our bond council. As I mentioned, we have recommended breaking up categorically instead of into a large over-consuming $600 million bond package into these specific propositions: economic development, drainage and stormwater, public facilities and heavy equipment, and then, of course, lastly, streets, roads, and bridges. And the next slides are going to go into some of the details staff and the team have created as recommendations, but this is where, to Rick's and everybody's point, we should really start the communication aspect. And hopefully anticipation that within the 2-year period, you will already start the next bond project so that you have continuous bond planning and issuance, so that it almost becomes natural for voters to understand what they're getting and what they're voting for. We can continue. One of the new items that was passed, of course, is affordable housing. We are recommending, since so much of that relates, and we've had plenty of conversations with Councilmember Harris's office, a vast majority of that coming from bonds. I think it would be significantly pressuring your general fund if you were to allocate the significant amount directly from general fund. I think it would squeeze it very tight. However, with a general obligation bond, which is typically the way affordable housing is funded throughout the country, we have recommended that as a category for voters to support or not support. And then next is drainage and stormwater. This is based significantly on the H&H study, and some of the project recommendations and lists are going to be on the next slide. You can go to that. And feel free to stop or ask questions as you come. If not, I will go to the next categorical piece, which is economic development proposition. This is something that during the overall budget conversations that we've had really came to, rose as far as an important aspect for the generational economic development for New Orleans. We have some very groundbreaking projects that will need public-private partnership. We've never really had a bucket of significant dollars or incentives at a city level to be able to get in the game in that public-private relationship. So we are recommending a portion of this, which is also akin to what other cities have had as far as in their toolbox, an economic development fund to be, yes, sir.
I'm sorry, excuse me, Mr. Chairman. There's so much speculation about the National Finance Center that's been thrown around. What is the status of the National Finance Center?
Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Thomas, I don't think I know how to answer that. I do not know. I'm not.
It's listed here, though.
Oh, go to the next slide. Oh, I thought. If there's anyone on the table or in the audience that could speak more intelligently to that than I can, please do.
I know Jeff Schwartz has spoken about this project. I just know with the relocation to the beach that there may be other economic development opportunities for maybe the prior location or around that.
Okay, thank you.
We'll follow up and give you some more details on that. But this is just some of the items and investments that the administration, the council, and the public has deemed worthy of a potential public-private partnership. And of course, this is not an all-inclusive list. Nothing in this is all-inclusive and could be missing other items. But we wanted to at least put some ideas out on the board, and hopefully between now and the time of council action, we can hone down the list. And this is more economic development. We have seen, I hope the council has seen and heard directly from our employees and the public about the importance of the investment of equipment and the benefits that our employees have had both on the public safety and non-public safety side. I think that it has brought a game-changing aspect for the public, and at some period of time, those new vehicles, that new equipment is going to get old, and the last thing in the world that you want to do is be in the same situation where you have to spend $100 million just on equipment. So we recommend having a continuous bond issuance so that you can replace vehicles and equipment on an ongoing basis so that you're not saddled with a significant amount of vehicles to purchase once again. And this just lists out different parts and facilities. That was another thing outside of equipment. Facilities was something that we deal with on a daily basis. For many years, we've had deferred maintenance and challenges, and we will continue to have that. Establishing a more revolving fund to be able to address those facilities in a preventative sort of way will pay dividends. Right now, it will save millions of dollars on the back end if we invest appropriately on some of the deferred maintenance. So that's why, although not probably glamorous or sexy, public facilities and equipment is part of the bread and butter of city government, and we would recommend investing in it through some of the capital programs. And then lastly, streets, road, and bridges. This is where the bulk of all the money would be allocated or recommended. This is not going to be enough, to everybody's point, to address the needs, but it is a big start of an ongoing plan to, we hope, address many of the deficiencies that Rick and his team and previous members presenting face continually in a more reliable sort of way. And I believe that just lists out all of the different items as provided by the team and staff as opportunities to be identified to the public. I think that's the conversation, is how specific do we want to be? Do we want to get to the actual street and block number, or are we going into larger pieces? And I think some of that can be hashed out hopefully in the coming weeks and months to be able to address to the voters, but we certainly wanted to at least start on that. I believe that's the last major slide. I will close with, we as a council and administration have been very thoughtful about tax increases and roll forwards, and we have chosen never to fully roll over any amount of tax, and the benefit of that is that our millage certainly has dropped. My data from 2018 shows originally at the Board of Liquidation level 25.5 mils. If you fast forward down to 2025, we're down to 14.5 mils. That's a significant tax decrease that the city has been able to adjust to for the benefit of the voters and the lack of increase in property taxes from the Board of Liquidation. Where and why that's important is that creates capacity for us to be able to issue this debt in the public markets that has now identified a organization that is lean, not reliant on tax increases, but is also available for the capacity to issue debts as high as $600 million on a continual basis. Just in framework, similar cities, typical bond programs every 2 years are 100 to 120 million. The fact that we have the capacity for this amount of bond sale is something that we should be proud of as an organization and a city. With that, I'm happy to address any specific questions if I'm able to answer them. If not, I will provide.
I want to say something, Mr. Montagna, and then Councilmembers Morel and Thomas both have questions. I agree with you that I think in the policy world we need to break this down as simply as possible, which is the city's bonding capacity is great right now, and it's going to grow sizably over the next 8 to 10 years. So we have wonderful opportunities. That's number one. Number two, you mentioned this, but I'll say it maybe as clear as you did, which is when we first got into office together, the Board of Liquidation had 22.5 mils. Because those bonds have gone away, the payments on the debt service have gone away over the last 7 years, those mills have been rolled back at least twice, and now they're at 14.5 mils, which means residents right now are paying roughly $32 to $35 million less annually because there haven't been projects on the books. I don't think anybody questions the fact that there needs to be projects and things being done across the city, and we don't have enough money even with the $600 million to do it. The two things I think the public will demand is the requisite specificity, and I think Councilmember Morell alluded to this, also certainty that things will be done. Because there's things here that we've talked about, and again, I'm not trying to point any fingers, but that have been expressed to be done in the past that are now rollover items. And so I just want to make sure that as we create the requisite specificity, which this has been the best presentation we've gotten from the administration on that, that we also create the necessary assurances and guarantees that what's in here is going to be as close to sacrosanct as possible.
Yeah, and thank you, Chairman Giarrusso, and to earlier conversations. The profound challenges of project management in the first several years of the administration was felt and seen by all, and there's no denying that. Where we are continuously and planning to move forward through the new leadership of both Joe and Rick is what you have seen, and I feel is a wonderful model of that, PMO office that is now more on the ground and professionalizing some of the more specific task-based projects so that we do not have that same cycle of challenges of trying to do everything across the city at one time. And so to only, I hope, support those efforts and double down on what you asked, I do feel confident that the team does have the recipe now to execute these projects. There's been a significant learning curve, and will things be perfect? Absolutely not, but at least the methodology through the PMO office and the accountability with some of the project managers moving forward is I think, a noticeable step in the right direction over the last couple of years.
Yeah, the last thing I would add is, as you have those assurances, my view to you, this is free political advice, is get those stakeholders to buy in and have them tell the public this is going to happen, this is why we need to support this. Councilmember Morell, Councilmember Thomas.
Yeah, I'm going to apologize in advance. I have to leave shortly, but I did want to highlight one particular thing that speaks both to the previous presentation and this one. In the proposed bond issuance, there is language regarding the New Orleans Public Libraries, regarding roof repairs. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
We can pull up the list. Yes.
Yeah. Here's what I find interesting. I'm sure there's several speakers who are going to come and speak on this, but this is money we've already previously had in the budget on numerous occasions that never got done. That we had allocated money for these roof repairs, that one of my primary frustrations with the way we budget is that we say this is how we want money spent, and then not with the council's input, that money gets moved somewhere else. Because there is a there is a insulated determination that that project is not ready to move forward for some reason or form. And now, after several years of both advocates for the library and the council saying, where's this money, why aren't we spending this money, now the money that we repeatedly allocated has now rolled into a bond issuance. And it is hard for me to tell a library supporter with a straight face that after 4 years of moving the money around, sticking it in a bond issuance to hopefully get their votes for it is anything other than what it is, which is kind of like some weird back-ass-word extortion. I don't know what else to call it at this point. If we as a council, and I know the chairman has done this repeatedly, have asked about this money and tried to put this money in the budget, and it never got done, what is the guarantee that when the money is bonded, it'll get done? I mean, we say that because it's in the bond issuance, it'll get done, but when that money comes in, because the money hasn't come in, as the money comes in, the administration will prioritize within the list of items how the money is spent. And it is quite possible that even though the library repair is in the bond issuance, you will determine when it's appropriate to spend that money and begin that process. And that could be a year from now, could be 2 years from now, could be 3 years from now, because you could still, in an insulated conversation, decide, well, our project's not really ready to go forward yet. as it has been determined for the past couple of years that that project, as the libraries continue to deteriorate, isn't just quite ready yet?
Mr. President, I think the only way I would answer that question in differentiation from the last bond issuance or the last budget proposals, I think what we are suggesting in this particular bond proposal, and I'm going to, attempt to put a bond counsel hat on, is that the specificity that the voters would vote on these particular items is the only thing that the money could actually be spent on, meaning whereas previously there's a large chunk, the council had the ability, the administration had the ability to move funds around if it was in the same category. If there is specificity on this is for that, legally there is only that product or that project that can be, and if someone needs to stand up and correct me if I'm getting this wrong, please feel free to do so. That is the differentiation on this particular bond proposal.
Well, I hear you, and I don't disagree with that interpretation, but also what I would add is you also decide when the check gets cut. And just because, and I mean, I've dealt with this both on this level, at the local level, but at the state level, we have bond issuance at the state level that get passed, and governors don't sign the check because they don't want the project to get done. And if this bond issuance passes and the administration chooses not to spend the money, I'm not even arguing with you the money will be spent elsewhere. I'm saying that procedurally, you can choose not to spend the money. And part of our frustration with the roof repair money previously is we found on numerous occasions the money wasn't spent, it was just moved. And these are the kind of games that can be played because even once the bond issuance is passed, once that money materializes, we can budget that money, but to be honest, we cannot make you spend it. Is that correct?
Mr. President, that is correct. That is correct. However, I would really, once again, reemphasize that this presentation and this bond issuance is for the future administration, the future council. Another step that you'll have to readdress with whomever's here at this table, I will not be here at this table. I don't know if my two people next to me will be at this table, but it is not intended for this administration, but we are trying to set it up for the future administration.
I understand, but we're asking for voters to vote on this when that other measure isn't settled. Because obviously we don't know who the next mayor or next council will be, and I appreciate you're trying to set the next mayor or council up for success, but you're really asking voters to take a leap of faith based upon past business practices. And I think that's where you're going to have a challenge. The challenge is that if everything was filed appropriately, if everything was done in an appropriate way, we would have a historical leg to stand on and saying, hey, if we allocate money for this purpose, the money's going to get spent. And I think it's particularly when it comes to this issue, I know that we're going to speak on it, I think that that promise has been broken so many times, I would almost argue that if we found the money this year to actually get this done, rather than sticking the bond issuance, that might be a token of good faith that we actually do what we say we're going to do, rather than push it on the future administrations. That's just my suggestion, Mr. Chairman, because it's one thing that we've put an old project in this bond issuance next to new, pretty sparkly projects like all the roads we have to get done, Rick. And we're telling a group that's had the can kicked down the road, now they'll be with a whole bunch of new shinier cans that are all going to be on the same road now at the same time. So I would certainly encourage, Mr. Chairman, that we look at what options we have in front of us, because our kids, our citizens are currently suffering with the lack of AC and heat appropriately, lacking with subpar facilities, and they've been dealing with that for years with the promise from this administration and this council that it would get resolved. And I think it's something we should deal with now instead of putting it as a new promise. But that's just me, Mr. Chairman.
All right, go ahead, Councilmember Thomas.
Thank you for improving the city's bond rating, and it's good to know that you have a rating where you can count on, at least during the capital program every few years. That is a step in the right direction. I just want to ask specifically about, especially because there's so much paranoia about, it says bridge, $4.5 million, Mayo Boulevard. in Morrison. I just want to make sure that's not that bridge that we're all against, that goes over the interstate, that everybody's ready to later lie down on the interstate for.
No, it's where Mayor Road crosses the Morrison Canal in the median of Morrison.
Well, we have one big concrete barrier, so
Yes.
we're going to get rid of that.
That bridge will come out. Yeah.
Okay, so on Morrison and Mill, we're going to have a brand new bridge there.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I mean, I think, one of the things Mr. Montagna we've discussed too is filing an ordinance that dictates what all the projects are, so that way the next council, I see Chairman shaking his head, yes, affirmatively. So that's what I think we'll do, try to do that. I know Councilmember, thank you, I think we're done with this. Councilmember Morel needs to leave, so what I'm going to do is we have ordinances that and I don't see Mr. Jatras yet. Oh, there he is. What I'll do is this. We have ordinances that ordinarily we vote on in committee. We're going to lose a quorum, so we'll just move all of those to the Budget Committee. To the council meeting on the 27th. I understand also that two of the ordinances have to be withdrawn from health, so we'll deal with that, Calvin and Ashley. And what we'll do is we'll get Mr. Jatras up here, and then we'll just end the meeting after that. Yeah, what I'll also do is I have one card from Mrs. Tanovich. This is not a voting item, but what I'll just do is wait till Mr. Jatras is done, and then if you were going to speak on a voting item, which is one of the ordinances, or motions, then you're welcome to come speak, okay? You can withdraw my card. Withdraw your card? All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Mrs. Tanovich. All right, thank you all from the table very much. Mr. Jatras, you'll be the last presentation, and we'll go from there. And Dan, I don't think this is going to take very long. Yeah. Mr. Hagman, we'll just catch up with you at the council meeting. Thank you. All right. We'll be quick, just you and me.
All right. Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Councilmember. Thank you for the invitation to return to the committee.
Right. Yes, you're welcome. Good to see you.
You as well. As the viewers at home, like you were saying earlier, may recall, at the February Budget Committee meeting, I shared some updates on the status of the rail quiet zone efforts, particularly focused on the corridor in the Uptown Audubon area portion of the city. So just a couple of items that we're updating since that meeting. First, on the insurance question, the city's risk manager as well as our insurance broker mentioned last time we had prepared and submitted an application to various insurance companies regarding this project to try to get some quotes of our own to determine what the cost of covering potential increased liability would be. So far at this point, a number of companies, we've gotten one response with some indicated prices. We've gotten four that have responded declining to provide a quote because they already provide insurance for the New Orleans Public Belt. We have another four that are outstanding a response, and then we're continuing to look for any other potential markets that could be given the application for their review and hopefully respond with a quote. So that is the current status of the shopping around for insurance options. I do want to note again, as I had mentioned last time, there's still some disagreement as to whether there actually is increased liability. So while this is part of our due diligence to determine the cost to cover it, the city and the public belt still don't have an agreed upon cooperative endeavor agreement, and therefore, we have not necessarily agreed that there is increased liability that would result from a quiet zone. On that note, we also discussed last time how Jefferson Parish's quiet zone is set up. I did receive some follow-up from Jefferson Parish. They were very helpful. Their quiet zone is slightly different than ours, but in that it existed prior to the current federal rules. However, they renewed their agreement with the Norfolk Southern Railroad in 2011, making some infrastructure upgrades at the time in order to keep the quiet zone in place. And the agreement they signed with the railroad in 2011 did not require Jefferson Parish to take on any additional liability. So that is a precedent that we are certainly very interested in and can inform the conversation, like I said, about the question of whether there actually is increased liability resulting from a quiet zone. And those are the major items that have progressed along since last month. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, well, I want to say thank you for your progress, particularly since Mardi Gras is a pretty significant intervening factor. I met with one of the members of the board also. This is what I think we ought to do, Dan, is pick a time, probably in early April, and see if we can go talk to a couple of the board members and maybe some senior staff and just salt this away. There's too many other districts that need this, and I appreciate the yeoman's work you're doing to push this over the line, but I think kind of we're at a sit down and have a face-to-face conversation. So if you wouldn't mind doing me a favor, kind of, I guess, that first full week in April, I don't know if it's the 6th, 7th,
the 7th.
something like that. Why don't we work the next 2 or 3 weeks and see what we can find to go have those meetings?
Sounds good,
All right, really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
I'm authorized at this point to do whatever I want, so I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.